With RB, and I'm RB, and this is a tutorial 2 of beginning programming with Python for absolutely beginner video. So if you have any no coding experience, this is the course for you. Last time I discussed about variables and data types. So we discussed integer types, string concatenation, and basically I give you a challenge. So I hope you did your challenge, and we're gonna go on and continue from where we left off. So we're gonna go ahead, and today what we're gonna discuss is something called a list. So list in Python is series of many kind of data types. So it could be a string, could be an integer, could be a float, could be another object, but we haven't discussed that yet. So let's go ahead and create a list. So let's go create a list of students, right? So list of students, let's say we have student 1 and then student 2. So you can put this, remember, you can put this in single quotes or double quotes. So student 2. So there you go. So basically you have a list of students, and I can go and print this list, and I can just do a Control R to run it. And then it said now it's printing student and student 2, right? So what I can do, I can go create an look at the first student, right? So let's make the students have names. So John and Bob, right? So basically we have John and Bob. This is our list of students. So we name them. This is a variable, so we named the variable list of students, and then we assign the variable the list, right? The list is composed of John and Bob, 2 students. So if I wanted to print John only, I would say list of students. And then the way it works with a list is it has a index. So it starts at a 0 index. This is a 0 index, and this is 1. So when you count from 1. In computers, you count from 0. So you go 0 and then 1. So if I were to say 0, right, and I want to print a 0, what do you think it will print? It will print John, right? Because it's the 0th index. So if I say Control R, and you can see it's a John, right? And then if I wanted to print the second one, I won't say 2, because then I'm out of range. So it would actually give me an error if I just did that. Yeah, it would say, I can't find the index 2 because you only gave me 2 index. If I were to add another student here, right? So another student, so Greg, right? So another student, then it will work, because now I have 0 index here, I have 1 index here, and I have 2 index. So if I were to just say, 2, and then Control R, and there you go. Greg is shown because it's the last one. Another way to get to the last one is if you say -1 here, it will print the last one. So Control R, so it does print the last one. And then if you wanted to print the first one, right, 0, and then the second one 1, and 2 is the third one. So what I want to do now is I want to go do something called a for loop. A for loop is basically walking through each student inside this list, right? So if I wanted to walk in, I start with 0 index. So this John is the 0 index, and then we have the 1, and then we have Greg. So I wanted to print each index, right? So what I want to do is start with a for. So that's how you start a for loop. So index, and then inside this list. So for the index, for each index inside the list, which is the list of students, right, I can go ahead and print. So the way we can print this, there's 2 different ways to print. So one is the for students, right, in list of students, and then we can just print the student. So we'll probably just student, right, student. So there you go. So that basically says for student in students, right? And then print it. So say if I were to do that, it says for student. Okay, so basically what we need to do is okay, so we can do actually the for loop for I in length. So this is the length of the students, list of students, and then print basically so now we want to get the index of that. So it's a list of students and I, so that should print the list of students, right? For I in this length of students and print the list of students. So that should print if I say Control R. It says okay, so we have an indentation error. It's no big deal. So what this is, this one. So this has to be indented correctly in Python for it to work. So it says int is not okay. So what I need to do is say range. That's why. That's another thing. So the range is basically from a 0 to the length of the list. So from 0 to the length of the list is actually 3, 1, 2, 3. And then I'm gonna basically do the print each one. So if I say Control R, it will print John, Bob, Greg, right? So another thing I can do, I was just showing you, I don't know if it wasn't working. So another way to do it for student in list of students. So student in the list of students. So now you can just put on print. It was an indentation error, that's what I was working for. So I have Control R, and that was also, so there's two ways to print it, so right? So this one, it goes, starts at index 0 and goes in the range of from 0 to the length of the student. So length of the student is from 0 to 3. So as long as it hasn't reached 3, it's gonna print the index list of students at the index. So this is whenever you see a bracket like that is at the index. So it starts first printing at 0 index, so this becomes 0. Then prints 1, and then so because the I changes each time by 1, so it says I plus 1. So I is basically at 0 at first, right? So I is 0 here. When the for loop starts, I is a 0, and then it increases, it increments every time by 1. So this is first 0, right? And then next time it comes and does the for loops, each time is doing a loop through this list of students. It starts at 0, it says, okay, I have list of students, 0 is a John, okay. Okay, next one, I go to the list of students at 1. Okay, now I'm gonna print Bob. You can see it prints John and then Bob, right? And then the next one is at 2. So since this goes from 0 to the length of student, it goes from 0 to 3. Once I reach a 3, I don't have, I'm done, right? Because this goes through the length. Length is 0, 1, 2, so it's actually 3. So that's why when he gets to 3, it's like, I'm done. There's nothing at list of students 3, so it goes 0, 1, 2. So this length actually subtracts 1 from the size, so it's actually 3 minus 1, which is 2. So then it ends at 2. So it prints this list of units 0, 1, and 2, right? So if you had another one here, it would print this size would be 4, right? If you had Stacy or something like that, right? And then it would print John, Bob, Greg, and then Stacy. Okay, so let's try it out. You can actually try it out. Control R, and then Stacy, right? There you go. So the reason I have to press I here because I is basically it's a variable that you create. So it's kind of like a counter, right? A counter that create. You set it as 0 at first, and then you increment each time through I. So then you see Stacy here too. Another way to do the for loop is you don't have to use the index. You can just use a temporary variable like a student. This could be any name. And then inside the list of students, you print the students, right? Okay, that concludes, let's go ahead and conclude today. and then we'll get into more difficult stuff later. So this is coding with RB, and I want you to do a challenge. So I want you to create a list of students. Let's say list of passengers in an airplane, right, with the names, and then go through each list and then print like the first and the last with an index, and then do a for loop and then loop through each one and then list the names basically, and then that's basically it. Until next time, and thank you for watching Coding with RB.